What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And on today's show, we got the home team. I stole this from a podcast, not stole, but kind of borrowed this. The guy does his own show. He'll have guests on and all that, but then he has his guys, his people, his compadres that he does his show with. So this is the home team podcast, Off the Ball podcast special edition, brought to you by SeatGeek, your number one place for all your ticket needs. Use promo code Off the Ball Network and get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. Off the Ball Network, all caps. So I am joined today on a special show with my guy Mo Up in Flames Murphy, solo coach Mo, and we got my guy Jeff Hunt. What's going on, fellas?
Happy to be here, man. You know me. I love anytime you guys invite me on and talk, especially I love this late season NBA stuff, and I love the conversation that we're about to have. It's going to be great. We basically already just recorded a great podcast.
We did a 45-minute show before even the show, so I think those are the best parts of the show, is the before and the afters.
Yeah, for sure.
What's good, Mo?
I'm good, man. Ready to get this conversation started.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about is the evolution of basketball, and we have three people here, including myself. Jeff, he lived the Bird Magic era and all that, and going into the Jordan era. I'm kind of, after the Jordan era, the Kobe, Shaq, the big man, kind of the big man era with Tim Duncan, Garnett, Iverson, and all that. And we got Mo, who's, the Kobe, LeBron, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry era, and got to see, that's what he kind of sees. So just kind of want to get into how we have seen the game of basketball evolve. And Jeff, I want to get into this, talk to you first, because let's be real, there's a lot of old heads that are probably, and there's probably people you've talked to in indirect, and people you hear about on Facebook, Twitter, that are like, oh, the game is so bad. It's not like how it was in the 80s and the 90s and blah, 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 and all that. And there's a group of my people in that range too, like, who were born in the 90s. 90s was the era, who kind of got told how great the 90s were and all that, and that it was entrenched in our heads that this is the greatest and all that. Even though I got caught the back end of Jordan, I was only 9-10 in the Jordan era, and then I saw Wizards era, if you want to count that, which those few years. But then, like, I've kind of saw the whole LeBron era, like Shaq and Kobe and all that. And then Mo, like you said LeBron and all, but like for you, Jeff, what is for you has been the biggest thing you've seen from the time you started watching basketball to now?
I mean, the biggest thing as far as on the court has been they let the players do what they can do. Like the biggest change was you would never think of a guy Kevin Durant size if he comes in the 80s. He's just like you're a power forward or you're a center. Or actually, he probably doesn't even get a chance to play. Like for sure, he's not going to get a chance to shoot. Like everything was still very positionally like dominated, like stereotypical. Your point guard dribbled up right up the center of the court, came to the top of the key, ran the plays. You had a power forward that was your rebounder,
the goal type.
Yeah. It gets some scores. Your shooting forward was a little more of a defender, but he was still like all layups. Your center, back the other center down in. Your shooting guard, was supposed to be your kind of outside scorer, even though they really didn't shoot from the outside. And then, some of the guys I remember through the years, like the Lakers were totally different in the 80s. That's why they were my favorite team to watch in the 80s. I was lucky enough to grow up with the Showtime Lakers, which is probably that was the team that made me fall in love with basketball. And they were a little unique, ran it up and down the court. Magic was a tall point guard, which was freak city back then. Like there's still really not really been anybody quite like Magic. I mean, I think LeBron's been close, but not the way Magic actually ran the point position at his size, but it wasn't really a shooter. So that's when things started to really change from like what everybody was entrenched in, back then. And then, guys like Kevin Garnett came along and they're like, no, this dude's, 7 foot tall. He's physical. but he can shoot from the wing and he can bring the ball up. And, then Kevin Durant, LeBron James, all these, massive bodies that could handle the ball and dribble, and you could run offense through them. Like, that's, if I just had to nail one thing as far as like on the court, like it was just the evolution of like, let players do more than like just their height or their size let them. And that really opened up the game of basketball to what we have now, to where we're at the other end of it, to where these teams are so. I was watching the All-Star game and I'm like, my gosh, it's like, I think everybody on the court at one point was over 6'7". It's just, the game is so tall now and so long, and these guys can shoot from anywhere. It's been incredible. Been incredible to watch. I mean, we get way more into it than that, but that's the biggest thing, is just like letting guys use their athleticism, their size, their range, their skills, not make them, not putting them in a box, like they used to.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that you just mentioned, is not keeping players stuck on. You're 7 foot tall, you have to be a back to the basket player.
Yes.
You're 6'2", you have to just dribble the ball up and just distribute and all that. Even though you can do more, you're set at what you need to do. You're like, all right, if you're 6'5", you're going to be our shooting guard. You're 6'7", you're going to be our, yep. Depending on your skill, if you can move laterally, you're going to be a small forward. If you can't, you're going to be a power forward. And all, we need you to be down low and just get rebounds and do the dirty work and all that. Everything was set and all that. And
yeah.
And in ways, you still need that today. In a way, you still need that, especially down crunch time and all that. But it's good that we have guys who are versatile. That your point guard could be your leading scorer. Your center can shoot threes. Your power forward can do a little bit of both.
Well, what's crazy now is you have to guard so much of the court. Like, you would, like, I'm telling you, in the 80s, you didn't even care about the 3-point line. I look up these stats all the time. I share them with you guys. I share them with my friends. I believe it was the 1986 Boston Celtics won the NBA title, and I want to say they made, I think it was 6 3-pointers in the finals or something ridiculous like that. And on an average night, this year's Boston Celtics make about 14. Like that's how much the game's
changed.
Like,
shoots that in the game.
You have to guard so much farther out. Then I think of guys like what could Olajuwon do in today's game? Or Patrick Ewing is another guy that, like, look, we see what Embiid does. Like, if you leave him open, on the outside, like the shots that he takes, like Ewing could have easily been that guy. And I'm not saying he didn't have the career he could have. I'm just saying like just what players, if you just open up the game and let them go, like what could have been. And that being said, Durant back in the day would have been he would have been a great center. He would have been like Abdul-Jabbar. Like, he would have scored on everybody anytime down in the post. Like, these guys could play in different generations. It's just what it looks like if you let them, just open up the game.
Yeah. And just like Mo, and, because you played basketball and all that, and kind of like with a generation where things started to open up a lot more, right? The Steph Curry era, as we like to say. And I've been like, I hear a lot of people say there's no defense being played, and yes, maybe it's not as physical as it used to be, in like where as far as hard fouls and all that. Like when JJ said, like, it just, the fouls were harder back then. Like, people were getting clothesline, like, so you saw the Pistons and how they played and all that. And, they had to play. They were allowed to play that way. So, hey, kudos to them, But I always say, like, when people say there's no defense being played, I always say, like, yeah, there's defense being played. It's just a lot harder to play defense, because there's just, like we mentioned before, you got Joel Embiid, who can not just back you up, he could shoot threes in your face at a nice clip. Same thing with a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns or DeAndre Ayton. A lot of these guys can take you not just on the post, but they could take you out to the 3-point line and shoot in your face. And there wasn't Kevin Durant's and Jason Tatum's and LeBron James's and these type of players where they're 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", and they can shoot at any point on the court. Like, Kevin Durant can shoot anywhere he wants. Like, that wasn't a case back in the day. So for me, when I hear that, I was like, yeah, we're not seeing the physicality, but it's like it's hard to play defense today because the guys are just there's too many guys that could do too many things. So, Steph Curry, like, look at him. How do you guard Steph Curry and all that? Like, you need 3, 4, 5 guys, to be able to like try to find him and all that. So for you, growing up in this new generation of basketball, right? You got to play basketball at in the AAU level and all that. How have you seen, from your perspective, the evolution of basketball and all that?
Okay. First off, you're giving me a little too much credit. I'm young. I'm not that young. Like, I didn't play in the Steph Curry era of basktalk. Let's calm down.
But I'm saying, like, the 2015 on, that's you, bro.
I wasn't playing ball then, though. Like, I was out of college.
I'm talking about,
witnessing it, yes. But here's why I feel like I can, where I feel like I have great perspective on it is because, like, I did play basketball, like high school basketball. There were teams still running the Princeton offense. Everything was all about your sets and get to your spots. And it started transitioning a little bit. Now, I think it more hit the full transition in like 2015 when Steph became a superstar. Even though we knew what he was at Davidson and all that, you got to also think about it, depending on what you're, just because it changes at the NBA level, colleges were still, Jim Boeheim was still running the legendary 2-3.
College is never changing. College is going to stay stagnant forever.
It hadn't hit high school yet. Everything was like, you don't watch the NBA. High school coaches hate it when guys like me watch. You don't watch the NBA. You don't get better. You got to watch college basketball. Like, my coach used to pitch that. Don't watch the NBA and think you're going to become a better player. That's not real basketball. Those are just a bunch of talented guys. So I got that I had an old school coach. But I remember running the Princeton offenses and all that. And then when I went to college, like as I'm my senior year in college, it was like the game changing a little bit. Like, more people are now shooters. Like, more black kids are now like shooters from deep range. And you weren't, because I was a shooter growing up. Like, that's what, like, I could shoot, but it still was like, it was fun. I was looked at funny because, like, you're a black kid who can shoot. Like, you supposed to be the AI type of guy. You're supposed to be the D-Wade type of guy. And I know you had Ray Allen and Reggie Miller, but they were also 6'6" and all that. But they kind of were separated different. They weren't, you forget about the athletic Ray Allen because of his years of catch and shoot and the Klay Thompson type of things. So that's why I feel like I get it, because then it was like you started getting like more black kids becoming shooters. And that was like a white boy team or like an outlier of like you got 1 or 2 black kids that can shoot the deep ball. Other than that, it's based off athleticism. And you knew when you played a white team, like you played an all white team, oh, they can shoot. They're going to shoot the lights out. They're going to shoot us out the gym. That was a thing, especially in AAU. Like, especially in AAU, when you stepped on the court, you seen a team full of white boys, you was like, oh, this is going to be nothing but jab steps.
Or a Catholic school. If you knew they were a Catholic school, you know they're just a bunch of shooters.
It was going to be nothing but jab steps, bounce passes, perfect form chest passes, and 3-point shots. Like that, and screens all day and getting
screens galore.
So that's where I do feel like I've seen it, because I played in it with all the old school type of coaches that were like, when the transitioning was happening, they were very pushed back against it. This isn't real basketball. Don't think you could be the next Steph Curry. You need to be the next John Stockton and just know your role and this and that. So that is like my perspective on watching it change, is because there was a point where I was playing it. I was watching all of the older coaches who had all the success at the high school and the college level and all that. They're like, nah. When that started changing, when people's favorite players were no longer the fundamental guys, when Tim Duncan was phasing out as a superstar and now your favorite player is LeBron James, or when Tim Duncan was phasing out as a superstar, like fundamentals they felt like the fundamentals. LeBron didn't play fundamental basketball. Like, when that started changing, there was like, I'm at the middle where like they just crashed heads. You had the old school coaches that didn't teach basketball that way, but you had everybody is trying to play basketball that way. So like they came to a collide, and it was kind of like, now that I think about it being little bit older, I'm like, man, that was really a wild time. And there's probably a lot of people like such as myself who feel like because of that era, had I played 3 or 4 more years later, I'd have been considered a lot better, for the simple fact, like, me being a shooter would have been way more accepted, would have been this, that, and the other. So I do feel like had I played just a little bit later, I would have been considered a lot better, because I wouldn't have been boxes like, oh, this kid can shoot from deep, but that's not going to last him long. Like, you're not going to. So I feel like a couple years later, I'd have been looked at a lot different.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I played basketball, high school basketball, 2003. So kind of still were, point guard, shooting guard, small forward. And I was someone who felt like they could do a lot more on the court. But since I was a very physical player, know how to rebound, boxed out, did all that little stuff, I was like, okay, you're going to be our power forward and all that. You have to do the dirty work because not everyone else is going to do it. And I would get frustrated because I'm like, I would be an undersized. I would be like Charles Oakley, like undersized, but I knew I can just be physical and box out and all that. But most of the nights I'm going against the team's biggest player, which is 6'5", 6'4", 6'4", 6'5", and I'm, barely almost 6 foot and all that. And I'm like, coach, I could do so much more than this. Like, this is actually hurting in this other way because it's like we have this big dude behind me who's 6'6", but he's garbage. I remember this, like there's a dude 6'6", but he didn't know how to play basketball. He was just because he's big. And I'm like, coach, I could do so much more. I got a nice mid-range game and all that. I can hand the ball a little bit. I could use my size against bigger point guards. Like I could do so much more. I'm like, no. You're a center, power forward. You have to play it. And I used to be like so mad, like I could do so much more. And I kind of felt like back in the day, like they used to just, no, you're that. You're set there and that's it. Like where nowadays, like I know people don't like a lot of direction AAU has gone, but nowadays everybody has to do a little bit of everything. If you're the big, you got to learn how to shoot. You got to learn how to dribble, and all that. So like, it's just crazy how
valuable. Shooting is so valuable now.
And handling the ball too. Like if you don't got guys, if your big cannot handle the ball or pass the ball out of a double team or out of a post move, you're not playing in today's basketball. You're just not playing. Where back in the day, you set it up and all that. The point guard sets it up with a bounce pass, and then you let the big man do his work, and it takes between 6 to 10 seconds. Nowadays. You can't do that nowadays because that's if you don't get set in 3 seconds and you don't make a move, then that possession is done. And then like they're never going to do that again. And then you're going to be on the bench. You have to be able to move. Or if that double team's coming quick, you better be able to pass quick and find that open guy. If you can't pass as a big man or you can't make quick decisions in the post, you're going to be on the bench or you're going to be out of the league because you have no value in this.
You know who the prime example for that is?
Jahlil Okafor. Jahlil Okafor is a great example.
I was going to say even as recent, like for the new Illinois, Kofi Cockburn.
Oh yeah, those guys would have been drafted
15 years ago.
They would have been drafted top 10 and all that.
15 years ago, he's a top 5 pick. He's a 7-foot guy, gets a bunch of rebounds, cleans up the boards, does dirty work, can score back to the basket. But since he can't step out 15 feet and score, he's not going to have a long career. This isn't the type of player that we want. Like that type of guy has essentially been phased out. It will get you to an elite level in high school. It will get you to be elite in AAU, and it will get you a D1 scholarship. Outside
player of the year, you're going to win player of the year, Big Ten player of the year and all that, but you get to the pros.
Outside of that, you're still like all those accolades. I mean, just imagine we're in a world where like the player of the year was him in the Big Ten, and you're like, this dude might not even get drafted.
Look at Zach Edey now. You see Zach.
Who's the kid last year from Iowa?
Garza, and then you got Edey right now.
You got Zach Edey. Zach Edey's 7'4" back. He's dominating, but if you look at a lot of draft boards, he's in the 70s and all that because people are worried like what is his position unless he finds a way to kick it out and extend his game to the perimeter. He's kind of limited and all that, and that's crazy how talk about evolution of basketball. Jeff, you grew up where it was inside out. It is literally you 100%. Needed
and the out wasn't very far out,
and the out wasn't far out, and guys just weren't taking obviously the way they are now and all that. It's just crazy how we went from a time period where you didn't have a big.
Here's what I want to tell people: we're not talking about the '60s. The 1991 World Championship Chicago Bulls made a total of 155 3-pointers in that season. 155
like a road trip.
Steph made 400 in a season by himself.
He does that in a road trip.
It's like the game was. I can't even explain what it was like to like what that 3-point was like. It was like it was desperation. And then now there were some teams like that, the Golden State Run TMC. If anybody like doesn't know who I'm talking about.
Tim
Just
Hardaway,
go
Chris Mullin,
watch
Richmond,
anything you can about Run TMC, because
they were ahead of their time. They didn't play defense, but they were ahead of their time.
Drastically ahead of their times. They're one of the best teams in the West, but then when it got to the playoffs, things tightened up, which they still do a little. They still do tighten up a little. That's a real thing. Like, you know, outside of Golden State, we really haven't seen a quote unquote wide open team really take charge of the playoffs. Like, it still gets tight, still slows down just a tad bit, scores get a little lower. And that, you know, but Run TMC was a great example. The same year that I think they were 1 or 2 seed in the West that year, the first year that Jordan and them won. But it's been so different. Again, the Lakers were like an outlier. Like, it was crazy what they did. The Showtime Lakers didn't score as many points as most teams in the NBA do now, even the bad teams. Like, it's just, you know, we think their pace of play was just so hyper, but it doesn't even compare to what these teams do now and the shots they get up now. It was fun to watch and all that, but it was just like they were such the outliers to where all these other teams were just bogged. I mean, we were, again, Chris, to go back to your point about how, especially right now, the backlash from the NBA, and it's all the 90s guys. It's let's be honest. It's Barkley and Shaq driving this bus, running over the current NBA because whatever. Apparently that makes you money. It makes whatever agenda it fills for them, it helps. But I watched it all, and I also remember NBA Finals games in the 90s being like 70 something to 80 something. Like, I remember the Detroit Pistons, you know, beating the Lakers, you know, in that series, and that was as late as what? Was that 04? Is it 04?
04, yeah, that does. But even
they were winning games in the 80s, 70s, and 80s.
Like, Celtics Lakers was game 7 was in the 60s going into 50s going into the fourth quarter. Pistons Spurs 50s in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we were romanticized about it because of highlights and the great games, and they were great games. I mean, I remember some of the, like, you know, Chris, I mean, I'm sure you grew up the Knicks Bulls rivalry, you know, in the early 90s. They really were great games. And, you know, Mo, you know, you're a Heat fan. Like, those Heat teams were in the 90s were awesome too, you know, with Hardaway and Glenn Rice and, you know, some of those guys. And there were some great battles and some great playoff series. But if you watch but people didn't watch the season as a whole. So if you want to talk about something else that's changed in basketball, you just couldn't watch it. Like, there was not a game on every night on national cable. You watched whoever might be in your area, or you might watch one game a weekend, or basically you didn't watch probably till the playoffs. So what people saw were a few highlights on the news. So most of these takes that come from these people that tell you how great it was in the 90s or in the 80s, basically they watched a couple highlights a night of, like, we'll say Jordan or whoever, you know, Barkley or whoever. That's all they saw. You know, that's what everything's based on. They really didn't watch the games. I was lucky enough to have a cable station, you know, the classic WGN out of Chicago. So I got to watch the Bulls a lot. So I've watched a ton of Michael Jordan games. I didn't get to watch the Celtics games. I didn't get to watch the Knicks games, except, you know, if they were playing on the big Sunday. So, like, you know, all these teams back then, like, people didn't watch them like they act like they watch them. Like, now you can. Like, now you can watch whoever you want as much as you want. People didn't really watch these games. They watch highlights. Back then, even SportsCenter was like a half-hour long show that had a few clips of, you know, every game, which was awesome. But you didn't learn as much. You know, I think that's just something that's come with time. It's just a lot of it's just bullshit. A lot of the most people really that act like
it's just
narratives.
Like,
it's narratives.
It's created, and it's just like,
and it makes us feel good. We don't want to let go of the past. But I'm telling you right now, I didn't watch until the playoffs. I didn't watch the Indiana Pacers play basketball, so I cannot give you a take on Reggie Miller. Like, I didn't watch him until the Pacers played probably the Bulls or the Knicks in the playoffs. I didn't watch Reggie Miller all season. I could not give you an honest opinion of how good Reggie Miller was. Yeah. But in my mind, I think I know, but I don't know. I watched him play probably 12 games in my entire life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also just how the world, and we've talked about this a billion times, like, everybody hates everything in the world right now. Anything new, everyone hates. And including sports, especially. Everyone hates anything new in sports. Sports fans hate anything new, you know, and it just feel like it's a product of that. Well, the game is soft. It's not as soft as you guys. It's really not as soft as people are thinking it is. Like, because, like we mentioned before, there's so much talent in the league. There's so many guys that can do abundance of things that it's hard to guard. It's not like it's Scottie Pippen who can guard the same the three, and that three can't do nothing. It's a very different game. And now I'm not saying everyone today is good and all that, but there's just a lot more skill that there wasn't back in these last few eras and all that. And like I just look at people complaining about scores and all that. And I mentioned the finals, Celtics Lakers. And you look at that final at 7, you think about it's the Lakers, the Boston Celtics. And we were thinking, we got Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest scorers. We got Ray Allen and all that. The only 2 times a team scored 100 points in that game, in a 7-game series. Only twice. We're talking about the great Kobe Bryant in that series and all that. And there was games that, and in game 7, it was 83-79. It was like 50-something to 50-something going into the 4th. So, like, it's just when people are like, the game that just happened, it was the Kings and the Clippers. Ooh. It 177 to 175, and I asked someone this, and they were like, oh, that's ridiculous, and I was like, okay, let me give you 2 scenarios. You bring your kids and your wife, so you got 4 people there. You spend $100 to take your $400, and you get food $500. If I told you you went to 2 games, you went to the 175 to 173 game, and you went to a game that was 83 to 79. And it was 59 going into the 4th. Which one are you going to be at, regardless of the outcome, regardless of what your team, whether with fan of what team and your team lost? Let's say both games they lost. Which one are you going to feel a little better that you got your money's worth? The 175, the one. Yes, it's a lot of scoring and all that. Yes, but it's entertainment, right? You're going to be like, wow, yeah, my team lost, but man, we got our money's worth. We got double overtime. We got a lot. We got 2 games worth of scoring, where the other one is like, oh my God, 83 to 79. That's just boring. With 33% shooting, what's more fun? I'm just saying. Like, I know you want to see a little defense, but you also don't want to see a game where it's like, oh my God, it's 80, it's 67. Like there was a game in the final, it's 89 to 67. Would you rather see that because there was defense being played? No, come on now.
But you know what's crazy is, and it's the word that you use, soft. So they feel like this era of players are like buddy and all that, right? Which of course, like they are. But here's what some of the old heads, they don't think about it, and they don't. It's not even they don't think about it. They don't understand it.
They don't understand. They don't understand. They don't want to understand, Mo. They don't want to understand.
AAU has given that. We've seen multiple pictures of like all these NBA superstars have their own teams now, right? We see, what's the one picture where you had like Jonathan Isaac, Trae Young, Miles Bridges, all of them were on the same team. They all played together. The whole roster went to the NBA. So yes, your buddy, but like when I was in high school, right? This was like my freshman year. I'm in the gym. We're at a tournament, but like you walk around, it was a big time tournament, but where you walk, you got Austin Rivers and Bradley Beal and Brandon Knight talking to each other. You got, you know what I'm saying? You got all these guys around my age. You got Zach LaVine over there talking to, somebody else over here. You got all these guys. You got D'Angelo Russell in the gym. He playing on the other court. So all us going over there to watch D'Angelo Russell go at it against Austin Rivers and all this. And so they think like, yes, we're buddy, because we grow up in the same gyms from 7, 8 years old. Like especially when you play at a certain level, you get to play in, like when you played all these big tournaments, like at Disney, the Worldwide of Sports, that tournament, like all the stars are in the building of, the high school and the middle school. So you're all always around each other.
The EYBL circuit.
You leave the games and y'all go to the same restaurants. All of y'all end up after one game at the same McDonald's. All of y'all find out you're staying on the second floor. All them dudes that you just played is on the third floor, and y'all chopping it up. So with having AAU and playing year-round basketball, and now obviously with like public schools not being as big as well, some of these schools are recruiting and bringing guys, IMG, these academies exist. You're taking these guys from all over, putting them on one team and watching them play, and then you'd be like, oh yeah, but when you get to the NBA, hate each other. When you both make it after coming up together, playing on the same team or always playing against each other. Brandon Knight and Austin Rivers, I remember in one summer, they played against each other 7 times. 7 times in one summer, they went head to head, and they were the 2 premier guys. They were always going back and forth, dropping 40 on each other. But like, you develop, like, bro, I'm always seeing you, man. Let's kick it. We're 2 of the top players in the state. We're 2 of the top players in the country. So we're all at these same events because the same coaches are trying to watch us. You develop a relationship, and then it's like, well, when they get to the NBA, all that's supposed to be forgotten. You got to have that 90s mentality where
Michael Jordan was best friends with Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing.
Yeah.
No, but you got to be Jordan and
but Mo, I
fuck the guys when you take them to dinner and make them think that you're cool. Like, no,
I love how they flip it with Michael Jordan. No, he went to dinner with Danny. He went to play golf with Danny. Don't even get in his head. Like, no.
I honestly like. I'm glad this is part of the show that I really love. I love hearing that perspective from Mo, and it's awesome because I always say, like, and I don't know why, like Mo just described why I like it, but when I see these guys like this at the games, I'm like, I like it because here's the thing. Right now, if we have a basketball tournament and we all play against each other, I'm going to play as hard as I can.
Exactly. It doesn't take away the competitiveness.
And then as soon as it's over, I'm going to be like, damn. And then we're going to go get something to eat and get some drinks. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I like that Mo described, like, I would obviously, this is, I would have no idea how that happens, but now it makes sense. Like, these guys, and I mean, I've even just at like, local stuff with like my kids and stuff, like I see like, how he come up with kids that he played against, and he's probably, still friends with them to this day. And now we're taking it to the max, of these NBA guys. Like, I don't get that either. I don't get the, like, no, they actually should all be for each other and trying to raise each other up and trying to be better, and trying to make trying to make themselves better, trying to make their business better, because it's a business.
It's a business.
Like, and like, I always go this way with it. Nobody ever tells a bunch of dudes that went to Harvard that they shouldn't be friends when they get out of college and they're running businesses and stuff. No, it's quite the opposite, right? Like, they all go to the same country club. They all decide on things, together. Like, that's what they do. Why shouldn't NBA players do that? It's ridiculous to think. Like, there's still rivalries. That doesn't you just because you don't.
Luka and Devin Booker, they absolutely hate each other, and we get to see it. Like, they just want everybody to hate each other. They want everybody. And here's my thing. But the problem is, you want them to hate each other. You want Joel Embiid to throw an elbow at Bradley Beal coming down the lane. But then as a Washington Wizards fan, you're going to be pissed when Bradley Beal's out for 30 games with a sprained ankle because he caught an elbow and fell wrong. Like, now we're going to be upset. We want these stars to hurt each other, but then we're going to be upset when none of these stars are in the game.
Well, Mo, too, like you touched on something else, and I'll go back. This is a big part of the NBA, like, evolution conversation. I go back to when these players did put their hands on each other and push each other around a little bit. Then guess what happened? Everybody clutched their pearls, and it was, we got to shut down the NBA. These guys are a bunch of thugs. Why would anybody watch this? So that is what curtailed all this. I don't like nobody, like, it got whitewashed over the years, and like nobody talks about it. But the dress code, the don't touch each other, the no fights, the early technical fouls that refs throw, like, that's all because, not because of, like, say, the Malice in the Palace, but that generation, when people, again, all they were watching was highlights. So if they saw a couple big dudes, go after each other on the court and they looked a certain way, it was like, oh, all these guys, like, not to bring hockey into it, but it's always funny because they just love it in hockey. The more blood, the better. Yeah. If anybody saw 2 NBA players get into it now and they punched one and the other one was bleeding, they would stop the sport for a week and talk about it. Like, they would be so appalled. Like, so they can't have it both ways. Like, that's exactly what Mo is saying. And that's when that all started, was the post Jordan years, when things were still physical, but we didn't romanticize the players like we did Jordan. Like, Jordan just pulled one over on everybody. Like, he's my favorite basketball player of all time. I think he's the greatest basketball player of all time, but he pulled one over on the entire country through marketing and appearance and everything he said. Like, he wasn't that dude. I mean, Jordan was just an asshole that played basketball, that knew how to sell shoes to the entire country. That's I'll Jordan leave it at that. I don't know.
Never argue with the refs, though. That's the thing. We all love Michael Jordan, right? We all love him and all this, but there's just like this mythical thing about him that he's never done anything, because he went to the finals 6 times and he won it 6 times. He never lost. It's like, Well, there's other years where he didn't make it past the first round. Like
those don't
count.
matter to most people.
I mean, those count. Like just because when he got to the finals, he got it done. He never won 7 games. Okay, that's a good argument. You can argue, but we also have to the other 8 years. Well, he played 14 years in total. He played 14 years in the NBA. The other 8 years, he didn't make the playoffs. If you count the Wizards, we're gonna count the Wizards years because
he just
can't take that away. He played those 2
years. Killing LeBron.
If we're counting LeBron James right now at the same age, he didn't make the playoffs, so he's not gonna make the playoffs. No, guess what? We know we're gonna do that. We're gonna reverse. We're gonna do Uno. We're gonna flip it. Mr. Michael Jordan missed the playoffs back-to-back years. All right, and he controlled the roster too. Let's not forget that. So we're gonna count that and all that. So it just I love Jordan, but it's crazy because I grew up and I used to be that person Michael Jordan, invincible, 6-0 in the final. I used to be that dude. LeBron can never do that. And now it's reverted. It's made me think oh my God, these people have gone so mad with the Michael Jordan stuff, especially when you go with Michael versus Michael versus LeBron. And then now since Kobe's passed away, now we're seeing that. And and noting that there's a lot of stuff Kobe did that people would absolutely hate if LeBron did the same thing.
Yeah.
Because Kobe asked for a trade. Kobe asked for a trade. He wanted out. He said on the radio, I want out. I'm asking for a trade.
They hated
Kobe. Were cruising.
Yes.
People hated Kobe Bryant.
No, let me tell you something too. People hated Michael Jordan too. Yeah. Everybody hated Michael Jordan.
But they just wasn't social media. Because
now
Jeff, well, so 7 years before he won a championship, right? Michael Jordan was 6-7 years. So what was his first championship? 91?
His trajectory on winning a championship was like LeBron's. Like when LeBron he didn't win for his first 7 years. But
so 84 to 90. All right, I think 91 was his first. So that's 7 years.
Yeah.
LeBron didn't win a championship in the same the same span.
Yeah,
it's 03 to 10. How when LeBron learned not the one in San Antonio, but the one he lost in Dallas. That's the one people give him a pass. He was year 3 and all that against San Antonio. Okay, young team. He's playing with Mo Williams and Boobie Gibson and Donyere Marshall. He's going against the San Antonio Spurs. We could give him that. But the one against people killed LeBron for that. Killed for not winning a championship. He got D-Wade. He got Bosh. They did the celebration and all that. They killed him. Jeff, you probably know. And just obviously there was no social media. People would have done the same thing to Jordan, and they probably were. We didn't hear it. No,
actually did. So here's something that's different. This was a huge change, and I'll just say sports. Michael Jordan changed everything. There was no ring culture before Michael Jordan.
I just started now.
I don't know how. Nobody cared when the Celtics or the Lakers lost one of those series. Nobody cared that nobody cared how many Bird got. There was no talk of Bill Russell back then.
Or who was on the team? Nobody was caring that. Kareem.
No, it was
Magic had Kareem and Worthy
you watched
and all
the season. It was Lakers. A lot of it was Lakers versus Celtics, but other teams won in the 80s. I mean, those two took up most of it. And then when Jordan won, it was like
Sixers had
it wasn't even about Jordan winning the championship. It was about Jordan getting past the Celtics and the Pistons. So then he did that and he won one, and they're like, "Oh, that's awesome." Then when he won then we had a three-peat, it was a huge deal. As to where now, a three-peat would be like, okay, you've won 3. Now you got to do it 3 more times.
Now you got to do it.
That all happened because of Jordan.
There's always something like that.
The ring culture,
ring culture
was created then,
yeah.
And it's absolutely astounding that what a difference that's been. To see. So Jordan never played under those.
No.
All Jordan had to do was win one. Imagine that. Imagine saying you only had to win one.
Real quick on that one, and it's straight to your point, Jeff, is talk to an old head and down Charles Barkley for never winning a championship and watch how mad they get. But then they will criticize Russell Westbrook or James Harden. They ain't winning no championships. But tell an old head, no, Charles Barkley couldn't have been that great because he didn't use that psychology on them. Charles Barkley was one of the greatest things walking to the old heads, but Russell Westbrook and James Harden can't get that same.
Mo, great point. Here's the romanticizing about the 90s. All those people will tell you that Barkley didn't win because of Jordan. Barkley went to the finals once versus Jordan,
and he was in the West for most of it.
It'd be different if Barkley lost 5 finals to Jordan. You know what I mean? He didn't. All these guys that they blame it on Jordan, I'm like, Jordan only knocked each of these. Jordan kept probably Ewing from a couple of them. Jordan Barkley from one, but he didn't keep him from 6.
Reggie, Pat. Who else is in the East?
But maybe those guys. Maybe only one or two per player. But they act like since Barkley played during the Jordan era, like, wow, he couldn't have won. Like, well, he didn't get to the finals either.
Yeah,
and he couldn't get there in the East. Like, he had to go to Phoenix to try and win a championship. That's and
then went to Houston at the end. People forget that. And they went to, and I don't want to hear, oh, well, he was old. No, they went to the Western Conference Finals and lost in, I think, 6 or 7 to Utah. So there's not, he got to the Western Conference. Because if he got to the finals, we would have gave him credit.
Oh, I dare you to tell somebody, like, imagine if John Stockton took the heat that Russell Westbrook takes for not winning yet. Like, imagine, like, you wouldn't even think of it. You wouldn't even think of it.
They don't do it like, and it's even some of the guys who have won the championship. Like, here's who irks me is Shaq. And the reason why, okay, you literally did what you say you hate, right? He played for Orlando, couldn't win the big one.
He did what today's players do.
Goes to LA, and he was going to LA. I know he didn't really, like, Kobe wasn't Kobe yet at the time, but they were telling him, like, there's a young guy, this and that. So he wins 3. Him and Kobe have this breakup. Shaq could have went anywhere, right? And what did he do? He looked down in South Beach, talked to Pat Riley. They had a former relationship. You know, he talked to Pat Riley and was like, hey, the same thing they were telling you about Kobe, we got this young guy over here named Dwayne Wade that if you get with him, I think y'all can win the championship. And we'll get all your old buddies, your Alonzo Mournings, your Gary Paytons. We'll bring some of the Wash guys on up out of here. We'll bring Jason Williams and all that.
They had a lot of Wash guys on their team.
They did.
Antoine Walker, Jay Williams.
We'll bring all these Wash guys, all these guys at the end of their careers. We'll bring your buddy Alonzo. We'll do all of this. But we have that young guy, the same pitch that the Lakers gave you of, we got this young guy, Kobe. We got this young guy named Dwayne Wade. And I think y'all together could win the championship. So he's like, okay, because he could have went anywhere. And I don't know what other teams were looking at him at the time. I don't know about what situation would have been great for him.
Well, they didn't talk about it at the time. It wasn't as
it wasn't a big deal. Like, he just
remember other teams involved. I think it was maybe always Miami.
He got traded, but remember, it was one of those, like, he could have controlled where he got traded.
But he's a big reason why the whole him and Kobe didn't work out. He's the big reason why.
No, it was Kobe's fault. No,
but Kobe was mad at Shaq because he didn't put in the same work ethic, or even close to the same work ethic that Kobe put in. So that's why Kobe was mad.
Yeah, but Kobe snitched on him. That's what did it.
I know there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but like, for the main thing is like, yo, you're not putting the same work I am.
But then what's crazy about Shaq, like, to compound that, he tried to do it a couple more times. He tried to steal one. He tried to steal one with Boston. He tried to steal one with Cleveland.
Yeah, he tried to steal one with LeBron.
He controlled the draft.
He tried to steal one in Phoenix. Remember when they had the running gun team?
But he did this from the jump, though, because remember they got the number 1 pick again, and they took Chris Webber, right? He threw a fit because I'm not playing with Chris. I want Penny Hardaway. He literally put the organization on a stranglehold, and because he did not want them to draft a person who was not similar, but like was kind of playing with it, like
another big position.
He was going to a person who was going to take away a lot of his space, and so he literally like put them in like a chokehold, like, hey, you better not, or else I'm leaving, and all that. So like, Shaq's doing stuff that we say all these today's players do, or forcing things and controlling the roster and all that. He literally has been doing this his whole career.
Kevin Garnett's another one that did the same thing. Like, I understand, like, he was loyal to Minnesota and did try to win one there, but he went to Boston because it was a better situation. He's another
Damian Lillard.
What's that?
Kevin Garnett is why we're mad at Damian Lillard, because Kevin Garnett stayed loyal to Minnesota, finally snapped on, like, I can't do this anymore. I need to win. Went to Boston, formed the Big 3. But if you ask anybody else,
it wasn't a Big 3, yeah.
If you ask anybody who lived in 08, but if you ask anybody who lived in 08 that was older, oh no, that was a Big 3. LeBron started that. So anyways, because they got traded, they couldn't control getting together. But anyway, because Kevin Garnett did that, that's why we look at, and I get it, Dame wants to stay loyal. He wants to win the championship at Portland. That's cool. But we're like, bro, you're going to turn around and be what Kevin Garnett would have been had he not left Minnesota. We're going to acknowledge how great you were. We know you were a great player, but like, we'll also, what will kill you for? It's not about not winning a championship. It's about the fact, like, you ruined your career rotting in some small market team that nobody wants to go to. Like, it'd be different if in Minnesota they were putting a bunch of players around him and he just couldn't get it done. No, they weren't doing that. And
it's ring culture, though.
Portland.
This is ring culture.
It's also the same thing in Portland where it's like, all right, we're mad at Dame because it's different if, like, bro, y'all are a championship contender. You just can't get it done. I'd stay loyal too. I understand that. That's your city. They got love for you. Dame everywhere in Portland, Oregon. So I understand that he is the superstar. He practically has the keys to the city. But you're mad at him because you're like, bro, we watched Kevin Garnett leave, go win a championship. So now we're looking at you like, if they're not going to do their job, why continue to stay loyal? It just seems dumb. Well, but it is ring culture because why does they have a ring to validate?
A guy that makes – there's some guys back in the day that make me think of that, like that didn't get one that I'm really like we didn't hold it against them, like I said, but I really miss, like, Patrick Ewing's a great example. Dominique Wilkins is another one. Like, he's one that reminds me. He's a guy that could have just literally went to another team and won one. Like, his skill set just carried over easily. You didn't have to build around him. You could just throw him in a team and they're going to win. You know, there's some guys like that back in the day, but we also don't, I don't want to say don't care, but it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, nobody looks at Dominique Wilkins any different. Lillard will be looked at different. Even Garnett, honestly, Garnett won one. Like, we're talking one of the, like, it's still, he's still judged by winning.
That one changed the whole outcome.
Their run was great.
And who they beat too.
That's what I'm saying. It did change it. Right. Yeah. But it's just like, but we're looking at, but think about the difference. Think about the difference we're looking at last year when Golden State wins. They needed to win the fourth before we would finally go.
They're a legacy.
Now they're a legacy.
Say, like, Garnett only needed to win one. I felt like, because I wouldn't have considered as one of those legacies. Like, if Dame Lillard wins one championship, he's good, right? Dirk, like, one championship, he's good. Yeah. Like, but it just shows that how much, you know, ring culture, this ring thing that we so focus. It's why people complain about, like, when we hear about load management and all this, and you know, and because everyone talks about rings and all that. Oh, if Russell Westbrook doesn't win rings, his career is not validated. Same thing with Dame and all these players. And then people get mad when we talk about load management. Yes, has it gone a little too far? Yeah, you could say that.
Absolutely.
But when fans are telling you that
only the playoffs,
we only care about the playoffs. I don't care you average 30. Jokic triple doubles, who cares? We only care what you do in the playoffs. Don't get mad when the players are like, okay, well, you don't care about the regular season. Yep. We're not going to care about the regular, because all you guys care about is the champ. And even when we win the championship, it's like, well, you had Steph Curry, so you got to go do it with Joe Schmo. And that's the thing with Kevin Durant that pisses me off, is that every time it's like we want Kevin Durant to win a championship with Sasha
Pavlovich and Mo Williams,
Boobie Gibson, old Donyell Marshall, and that's the only way you get validation.
Shout out to Donyell Marshall. Like,
I'm sorry but like, or Eric
that guy
Snow,
pulled a career out of nowhere.
Old Theo Ratliff and Aaron McKee. Those are the players they want. Kevin Durant,
Aaron McKee,
LeBron
great
James,
rebounder,
solid defender. Eric Snow, solid. It's not no disrespect; those guys played their roles, but that's who we want these guys to win champion. We want them to win with remember, Kevin Durant's like, these guys want me to win with like a rookie, you know, Scoot Henderson. Yeah. It's like, this the only, and like, he wins a championship. He's the best player in that series. Yes, he had Steph Curry. It makes it easier and all that. But guess what? He went toe-to-toe with LeBron. He was hitting game winners on LeBron.
He's the one who walked away with the finals MVP in that situation.
Yeah.
But like one other thing, like, I want to say with that is like one ring. Just think about, in the historical sense, how much different we would look at Russell Westbrook. You tell me he leaves his career winning a ring. We're talking about a guy who averaged a triple-double 4 times in his career and is also an NBA champion. Like, it makes, like, I think when Dwight Howard won the championship, I know it was in the bubble, but when he played for the Lakers, I know he was a role player, I understand. But, like, Dwight Howard, like, for me, I'm one of those, like, Dwight Howard's 8 years in Orlando made him a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, he could have retired after that, walked away from the game, and never played basketball again. And I'd be like, he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Oh, well, that, you know, the down years with Houston and LA. But once he came back to LA and he became an NBA champion, like, oh, he's going to be the first ballot Hall of Famer. All is forgiven about your first time in LA. All is forgiven about what happened in Houston. Because at the end of your career, you won the championship. Same with Gary Payton. Even though we don't really look at Gary Payton as a key contributor, but like, with all that throughout his career, he walked out playing for the Miami Heat and winning a championship. Like,
I'll tell you, a guy that did it in reverse was Rondo. Rondo got his early, the very beginning of his career, and then had a iffy, like just kind of a weird career after that. Some good teams, some bad teams, in and out, and some things. But he was a big part of a legendary Boston team that we're always going to remember, for winning the championship. So Rondo is always going to be remembered as an NBA champion point guard for a great Celtics team. Like, that's legendary.
Yeah, and it's one of those, like, so it's like the ring culture does change it, but the problem is we made ring culture matter because of, like, really essentially 3 to 4 guys. Yeah. Like, ring culture is obviously, like you said, Jeff, it kicked off with Jordan, so it's like because but then when we go on from there, who set the precedent there? Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. Like, those are really the only multiple time champions in the NBA right now, currently active, that are still playing like superstar level. So like we put this, but like they're the only guys playing at a superstar level that have won more than one championship.
Well, it's funny too how we decide who gets the ring. Like, let's be honest, nobody cares or doesn't care how many rings Klay Thompson wins. But he was right there. He's the number 2 or 3 player on the team for 4 rings. And it's like, oh, that's great. You got 4 rings. But Steph, like, those 4 rings for Steph matter more.
Yeah, he doesn't get validated for it like we do. The second or third guy doesn't, depending on who your second or third guy is, doesn't get, like, the superstar going to get all the credit. It's like the quarterback coach kind of thing with the superstar player. But then the second guy, like that star wide receiver. And I've said it when it comes to NFL, right? Like, nobody cares that Terrell Owens never won a championship. Nobody cares that Randy Moss never won a championship. Jerry Rice didn't set the precedent that, like, oh, as a star wide receiver, you're not that. We care about the quarterbacks. We don't care about the second guy, the superstar wide receiver over there. We don't look at you any different. And just like had Klay only been a part of 2 of them, we wouldn't look at him. We don't look at him any different being a 4-time champion as opposed to a 2-time champion. And he's been a key.
And he was a big part of winning a couple of those rings. Like, they don't get the
on all 4. Like, he was a key contributor, and sometimes the reason why they were able to win a series that they got to the finals or whatever it was. But we're not beating on the Klay Thompson, like, where are we trying to put him historically being a 4-time champion, one of the 3 greatest shooters of all time we've ever seen? Like, no, we get all the Steph gets to be the guy who might be a top 10 player of all time. Kevin Durant being the head guy on the championship might be the greatest, top 10 player of all time. But
so let's do this.
My fault. My audio. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Oh, yeah,
my audio went out for a second.
Let's do this real quick. I'll ask you guys a quick question, like, real quick. Who in the NBA right now has to win a ring?
Jokic,
Luka has to win a
ring. Not yet.
Ooh. You know who has to win it?
Tatum. Is Tatum at the point where he has to win a ring?
Tatum, Harden, Embiid, Jokic, Russ. Now that he's on,
do you think Harden's
number 1?
You think
Harden's
so?
Number 1. I think.
No, I think it's Jokic. I think Jokic is number 1.
I think
Embiid's up there.
I think it's Jokic, because if he wins 3 straight MVPs and you walk away in those 3 years being labeled the best player and don't win a championship, that's a problem.
I get that. I just think there's still more time for him to win one.
No, I don't mean this year. Like, I just mean we'll say in the next.
Because I think James Harden think James Harden has another 3 or 4 years.
No, I don't need it. So you think
he has to win one? Because I think Jokic could still be a good player.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Like, whose career needs a ring?
Harden needs one.
Well, then if we're saying in the next 3 or 4 years who needs a ring, I'm going not in any order, but Jokic, Tatum, Luka. I mean, we'll put Harden in there, but if I'm just projecting 3 or 4 years out, and I think Kevin Durant needs another one. I think
Kevin needs, who else? Everybody. I think Anthony Davis needs another one.
I don't think he's on that level, though. I don't know if he's on that. I think he's good. I think we're fine. I don't think anyone cares.
I think he needs.
You're right. He doesn't need another one. But if he doesn't,
championship, the fall off, I think they're.
I don't think people are going to look at AD and like, man, he only won one. I think he's just one of those players. Like, he won one. That's cool.
Yeah,
I think when his career's over, we're just going to be like, in 5 years after his career's over, we're just going to be like, man, he won a championship and he was great in that year, and that's it. Like, he's not one of those legacy.
What about Dame? Like, are we just giving up?
If Dame stays in Portland and stays loyal, he could play.
He doesn't need to win one.
He doesn't need to win one in Portland.
I don't know if people are going to look at him like that way, like regardless if he wins or not. I don't know if he's at that level. Like, you feel me? Like, there's certain players I feel like I think Kevin needs to win another one, even though they're going to discredit it. If he wins one with the Suns in this year, next year, they're going to be like, well, we didn't
even talk about
Booker
Chris Paul. It's Chris Paul.
And Chris Paul.
Chris Paul needs a ring.
But it's how. But it's. I think it's also how he plays.
I put Paul above Harden.
But how he plays factors in, because if he's a bum. And even if they win, but if let's say he's shooting 38% and he's only averaging 7 points and 7 assists, I think people are going to view his ring very differently. But if he's averaging 15 and 9, or 45% shooting and shooting a nice clip from the 3-point line, I think it's how he wins the championship.
What Giannis needs another one. Giannis can't just win one.
Yeah, Giannis is a legacy player. He's going to need more. He needs more.
How many does he need?
3.
If he stays in Milwaukee,
I think if you get to 3, that gets you. I think
if he stays in Milwaukee,
if he stays in Milwaukee,
if he leaves,
but he just sold the team.
5.
They just sold the team to Jimmy Haslam from the Browns, which I think is hard.
He's not going to like that at all.
The team is getting older, right? Middleton's he's getting a lot of injuries. Brooke Lopez is getting up there. Drew Holiday's getting up there a little bit. It's going to be. I don't know if he's a Milwaukee lifer. I don't, and people aren't going to be flocking to play with him in Milwaukee.
I'm with Giannis too, because he kind of put his foot in his mouth when he won the first one about doing it the right way and all that. So now when he leaves, he has to win. I think he has to win multiple with the next team if he leaves, because he's already set himself up.
I think if you get 3 championships, that's where you get to the plateau and to that best, you're the greatest of all time. Like when LeBron won that 3rd one, I think that put him on a different level.
Yeah.
So like I think once you get to 3 and all that, that's major. But like
that's a good. I like that list. I agree.
Yeah, like I think Harden because I think Harden, he gets the 1. We think so much different. Like I said, it's the ring culture though. Like people forget how good James Harden was. Like, yeah, he may not have done it in this sexy way or whatever, but like. There was points where he's averaging 34 points a game, 37 points a game, and getting to the conference finals against the Warriors, and like a game away from winning getting to the final, and they would have won. They would have played Cleveland. They would have killed Cleveland and all that. But his team missed 20,000 3-pointers in a row and all that. So it's just crazy how we're not going to validate his career.
That Nets team probably wins one if he doesn't hurt his hammy. Or
if Durant, that Rockets team, if CP doesn't, and then
the Nets team.
Oh, the Nets. Oh, Brooklyn. Yeah,
Brooklyn. I think that Nets team wins.
And look how different.
Size shoe, they win that series.
Yeah,
and they play who's.
And now we're talking. You know what we're talking about now? Giannis needs to win one. If we're talking,
Giannis,
look how that changed.
Giannis' pressure would be on because he'd be a 2-time back-to-back MVP with no championships, and like the pressure is on, and he's a legacy player and all that. So like, there's a lot of pressure. But
player now that he won a championship,
yes, and early in his career. So he won a championship early in his career.
Entering his prime, he becomes now like, okay, we think. It's safe to put an expectation, like at least win another one. He's at that. Like, he's arguably the best player. Like he's been when he won, he was top 5. Could argue he was the best, but he was top 5 at the time. Since he won one as a top 5 player, has elevated to being the best player in the league. Arguably, whatever, top 3 for sure. Like now he's that legacy player. Those top 3 to 5 guys on in the league in their eras, they're the legacy players. Everybody else. Maybe top 7. Maybe we'll go to 7 and stretch a little bit because that 7th guy might be young. Like that Jason Tatum guy. Like Jason Tatum might be a legacy player if he wins one in the next 2 years. Because
he wins one quick. He has to win one in the next few years. And
right. But other than that, like we don't put legacy on everybody. But if you, in your era, top 3 to top 5, when you win your first championship and you elevate to the next level, it's safe to say we should expect another one at some point. You ain't got to go back to back or win 3 in a row. But that his championship made him a legacy player.
Yeah, for sure.
Championship, and we're like he's trying to create a legacy, like be a legacy player, but he's not there yet because he doesn't have one.
100%. So this is a great conversation. I appreciate you, fellas. We're going to continue this because I feel like we can do like a series of this because there's so much more we could talk about. But I appreciate you, gentlemen, joining me for this one. We got to talk a lot about errors and all that, and just how the game has grown to where it was before. to where it is now. So this was a fun conversation. I appreciate you guys for hopping on. So I'm Chris LeBron. That's Mo Murphy. That's Jeff Hunt. We